Gosh, you're asking a creative person this.
I was about to say the same thing.
That's a good question, and
Let's go. Hi, Kate. How you doing?
Hi, how are you? Very well. How are you today?
Good, good. I can't thank you enough for making it to this episode. You're the first episode of El Mudir.
Oh boy. So you're gonna set the bar low.
No, no, real high. It will be real high. Yeah, starting with you. That's an honor. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Just the whole point of this episode series that I'm trying to start the channel is to focus on the importance of operations management in the creative business and the creative/marketing business, right? It's always a problem for the clients from the client side and agency side. Always, there's a problem with deadlines, problem with scope. Everything is usually, I don't know about you guys. See, this is why we're having this conversation. I don't know what happens there in North America. I can assume though, but most of the world looks at North America as the center and hub of advertising, and marketing, like the mecca of advertising. But what I can say from this side of the world is that everything is last minute. Everything is kind of tight on schedule. I'm talking usually local agency. I don't know what happens in multinational agencies, but I can assume it's the same thing, right? Last minute, tight on schedule. Scope is kind of hazy. Templates not really followed. I saw, and this happened with many agencies I've spoken with, right? Briefs, being sent over text messaging, voice notes, things like that. And I'm thinking, my belief is, this all has to do with operations management. And this is why I'm starting this series. So yeah, I thought I'd hear your perspective on this and your story. You have an amazing career. It's you're what we call a one club woman, right? You spent all your career at Stoltz Marketing Group. You started as a graphic designer, right? And now you're the chief creative director of this marketing group in Idaho, the state of Idaho. So if you could, thank you for being here. And again, right. And if you could walk us through your career, tell us how this happened. How did you manage to start from a graphic designer and then, end up being the chief creative director?
Sure, you bet. Well, it all probably started with I was always obsessed with art as a child, and as I got into college, I thought, well, how the heck can I make a career out of this? And graphic design and technology always intrigued me as well. And so I got a degree from the University of Idaho in graphic and interface design, which is now called user experience. So I did. I started by being an art director and sort of progressed my way. And what I had the knack for too, what I realized very quickly is that design is just one piece, of the business, but ideas and conceptual thinking was a really important aspect. And I loved that part. So I kind of, I like to say I'm a hack writer now. I actually do more writing than I do design work at this point in my career, but started to be really involved in fully integrated campaigns, coming up with the ideas, writing out the concepts. And so I was lucky enough to cross over into both worlds. And so just continue to be given the opportunity to advance my career. And soon I was mentoring others along the way. And I blink my eyes, and 20 years later, here I am as the chief creative officer, which has been also wonderful. It's challenging, but I learn every single day. I think I came into leadership with the attitude that I knew I didn't know everything, but I was going to do my best by just learning from not only people I had worked with in the past, but also having mentors myself. And now I just have a team that I consider my family. And yeah, it's great.
It's amazing. What's
Yeah.
the what kind of advice would you have for aspiring creative professionals? Those, fresh grads, those who um, not necessarily have to be grads, just those young professionals who wish to be a chief creative officer one day.
You bet. Well, I think grit and perseverance are two really important qualities. This business is very high paced. It's constantly changing. And I think if you're a lifelong learner and always curious, you'll do well. But I think some of the advice I give is being a good listener and really understanding your team. What you start to see as you work with other individuals, especially within the creative side, is there's lots of different personalities. And I think one of the most important skills you can develop is really that emotional IQ, and figuring out what people's strengths are, and then putting together the right teams for projects, and just being a really good listener. Um, I think when you become a creative director, your job is to inspire amazing creative and make sure it's on strategy. But at the same time, you also have to let go and have give your team autonomy, and let them. Your vision might actually be a little bit different than what they come up with, and that's okay too. There's a lot of creative ideas in the world, and so I think it's trying to nurture and grow a team to reach their creative potential. And someone once told me being a creative director is probably one of the most thankless jobs, because you're always a part of the process, but really it's about making it about your team and making sure that they're growing, learning, and creating amazing creative. And if you can inspire that and look for putting the right team together, then the magic happens. So I give a lot of credit now to my team. They make me look really good, but it's really about finding those amazing people and letting them do their job too.
I think that's spot on, as you would say. The team chemistry, team dynamics. I think that's vital for the success of any organization. Would you do? I mean, speaking of that, what's your reaction usually when you find someone who's, I don't want to say toxic, but yeah, toxic. What
Well,
do you do?
uh,
Yeah, go ahead.
that can make situations really hard. I think especially in leadership, oftentimes there's something else happening in that person's world that you have to get to the bottom of. And so, one thing that we are really intentional about doing is working very closely, having a lot of one-on-ones and check-ins with our teammates, both as a group and as individuals. I think that over communicating can oftentimes take out a lot of the tension within an agency. I also think, to your point, process is an important aspect. Creative can be really, really messy. And we took a lot of steps in the last 4 or 5 years to put pretty streamlined, really buttoned up processes in place and really it was about making sure all the right communication checkpoints were there. And I think when you come across a personality that is toxic, especially in our agency, we're small and we're very also intentional and careful about hiring. We like to look for people that care about each other well beyond the office doors. That's something I think that makes us very different, is that our team cares so much about the work they're doing and the impact that it's having on the world, as well as each other, that it becomes apparent very quickly if there is a toxic personality. And those people don't tend to last very long at our agency, but we're pretty careful about making sure we look out for that in the hiring process. But yeah, I think that it's dangerous. I think again, just like recognizing people's strengths and playing up to those, and then also recognizing that we're all human beings and we make mistakes too is important.
Right. So you'd say, you'd say you'd look at what's going on in their lives. If they need any help,
Mm-hmm.
you'd offer it. So
Absolutely.
I'm assuming well-being has
Mm-hmm.
a huge impact on the productivity of a creative person, right?
Absolutely. Yes, we're really trying to we're a woman-owned, women-led agency, and we're really trying to change the way business is done. I think making sure that we are caring for our employees as the whole being. That means their mental health, their physical health, their emotional health, all of that is really important. And some people ask me, why have you been with an agency for 20 years? That's very abnormal. And it is. And what's interesting is I had always been granted the flexibility before it became a trend. So when I had a family, I went part time for a little bit. I had a flexible schedule as my kids went through school. And that was really important to me to have I had passions outside of the office, and that actually I think helped me understand the human condition and also just become a better creative myself by exploring other passions. So we're very careful about making sure there's this work life harmony in our office, and I think that definitely helps people. Especially in the last 2 years with the pandemic, it has really helped us not only just retain amazing employees, but also it made us stronger. So
Do you usually um, follow a certain routine? I'm talking like pre-pandemic. Um, do you make sure that you, no matter what's going on, that you'd spend a day or I don't know how long you'd need
Mhm.
to maybe spend outdoors or to
Mhm.
exercise, to take care of your mental health, your physical health? Are these things you do and you believe they're important for your productivity as a creative professional? I mean,
Oh, absolutely. I think that sometimes your best ideas happen when you're not actually sitting at your desk. There's actually science behind that how your brain works. And I like to say my best ideas come when I'm on a mountain bike ride. Um, that's probably because I'm trying to take my mind off the physical pain of climbing a mountain on a bike. But yeah, I really believe in making sure that you have that balance in the fresh air, and that's or going to see film or spending time with your family and friends. That think as creatives we're supposed to be empathy driven, and I think the more life experience you have, the more you can expose yourself to different types of people, the more you can travel, the more you become an empathetic person, and that helps with creative problem solving as well.
you can't stress about work the whole time,
No.
because deadlines are always going to be there. Um,
Well, and to your point, we make we actually have a 4 day creative treat we go on every year. We've been doing it for the full 20 years. We took a little break during the pandemic just for safety purposes, but we do a 4 day whitewater rafting trip. It's fully catered. We have guides and we camp for 4 days together. And there's no Wi Fi, there's no cell phones. It is, you're just spending time in nature with your colleagues. And it has been the best bonding experience with our team I could ever imagine. We've done it for 20 years straight. And we're lucky and we live in a place where we have beautiful rivers in Idaho. It's very accessible. We do it in the summertime, but just to your point there, I just think it's really important to have that time away from a computer. Um,
right. So, but
yeah, it's important.
what do you do about deadlines then? I mean, there's always going
Um,
to be a deadline. Do you go back to account management and say, listen, hey, this is not working. Your deadlines aren't realistic. What's going on? Do you have these periods of time where you're like, the deadlines don't make any sense?
well, part of our business is being in customer service, right? And making sure we're doing everything we can to exceed expectations. But what we did is we established a creative lead process where there's multiple check-in points. So we like to make sure we're raising the red flags way before it becomes an emergency. I mean, that's in a perfect world. Yes, we get very tight deadlines sometimes that we can't necessarily adjust. So, and then we will flex for our clients when that is needed. But we also, as an agency, have put together processes and especially that over communication piece to make sure, hey, I'm seeing this deadline come up. I'll work with the account manager. I know I'm going to be pretty booked out in, a couple of weeks or in a week when it's due. Is there any flex on the timing? If they say no, then we look for the flex in the other deadlines. And so I think it's that over communication piece and having a bit of a process and check-in points that prevent the emergencies from happening.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's the whole point. Having these checkpoints, the processes. Do you have them written down? What do you do with newcomers? Do you have an orientation? You walk them through these procedures and you tell them, like, this is what we do and how to do it and all that?
Yes, we have a very thorough onboarding process when there's a new employer, a new teammate. We actually take them through, we do have written down processes. We take them through both sides of the business. So even if you're creative, you're going to learn about all the account team processes as well, because I think, again, the more knowledge you have, the smoother projects run. So we spend a very full 2 weeks. And then we have a 30-day plan, a 60-day plan, and a 90-day onboarding plan so that people have a very smooth transition into our agency. Another thing that we do is we don't necessarily hire people that have agency experience. I would say we look for really interesting, smart, driven, versatile people that take initiative. So I think that is why process is even more important, because an agency can be pretty chaotic at times. We serve 30 plus clients and there's always deadlines and moving parts. And so for us, making sure that onboarding process and that you're being trained on how, start to finish, what happens with a creative brief, what happens when we lead an integrated campaign, when there's multiple pieces that you're producing at the same time. What about a website? What happens on a video or photo shoot? What does that process look like? We have a whole standardized system that we train people on. And then, as I mentioned, on the account side, we try to make sure we're also training our creatives in terms of strategy. One thing I wish I would have done this is another little bit of advice for up and coming creatives, is get to know business, get to know the business. I wish I had taken more business classes in school. I just learned by being in the business for a very long time. But I think building business, looking for opportunity, and then also, the relationship building aspect, and then of course, making sure people can achieve their business goals. That's why we do what we do, is to reach certain goals for someone's business. So we make sure we're making sure that we train our creatives on the account team, on the account side as well, just to make sure they're understanding how the account process goes.
That's music to my ears. Knowing about the business that you're catering to, that makes a huge difference in the service you provide and the creative that you eventually work on. When I was in the agency, I always tell young professionals working with me that spend time at the client side, understanding the business itself beyond the marketing department. Like go to sales, spend time with sales, spend time at procurement, try to talk to HR, understand this company inside out, understand the procedures, the processes, try to go on sales visits. Like you must go on sales visits, understand the customer of the customer, because that's the whole point. This is why you're doing this.
Absolutely. I don't think it's very often when I teach a class at our local university about creative concepting. And I always say it is very unlikely you're ever coming up for ideas for yourself. You're usually coming up with the ideas for someone else that doesn't walk in your shoes. And you need to learn to walk in their shoes. So a part of our agency's creative process is we do quite a bit of research before starting, especially with new clients. We do things like you just mentioned. We go and observe. Say we have a new healthcare client. We go and you can talk to people who are involved with the organization. That could be employees, it could be stakeholders. You can learn a lot from customer service. They're getting all the bad phone calls, right?
Right.
Oftentimes. And then we observe. We go and try. If we're doing a product, we try the product out. We talk to others about trying the product out. And so I think there's that research. The more knowledge you have in the industry, we look at competitors quite a bit, what's happening in the space. That makes it a lot easier to come up with the big ideas, of course, but also there's a lot of clutter out there, and trying to figure out the unique way to touch someone emotionally so they actually pay attention to your marketing. Research is key to that, and understanding your audience.
Emotionally, I was going to keep this for the last part of the episode, but I wanted to ask you. I noticed a lot of your clients are B2B kind of businesses, right, or entities. Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, I would say it's about 50-50, but we do have quite a few business, but it's very diverse. We have everything from energy to education, to wood products, to pet insurance, to healthcare. I mean, it's very broad. So we have a lot of different sectors we serve.
Right. Okay. I didn't know about the 50-50 thing, but I noticed the energy companies, the pet insurance company.
Yep.
That's something that's very unique.
It's interesting. The pet insurance business, it's very interesting because that is growing substantially in the United States. It's probably different globally, but pet insurance, which is considered a business to consumer, industry, it is crazy how much has grown in the last 5 years or so, and especially with technology. But yes, like energy is all business to business. That part of we service 2 energy companies, and they're business to business for sure.
Right. About B2B businesses, let's focus a little bit on B2B businesses, because I think I think it's a bit tricky. It's not like B2C. I think there's a lot of hard work in B2C. But I think it's more straightforward from a strategic standpoint. I think, but B2B, it's very, very tricky. What's your process there? What do you do? Do you look at the clients of your client as people? I mean, of course, they're selling to people at the end of the day. I used to always say, they're people at the end of the day. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So what how do you approach a B2B client? Is it different, like I said, or no? Not really.
I do believe strategically it can be different. But I absolutely agree that at the end of the day, you're talking to another human being. I also think there's creative opportunity in everything. So whether you're talking to your client's customer, or you're trying to reach a group of people for your client to build their business, you're still reaching people. So that trying to figure out how to touch them emotionally. And I think that's where it goes back to that research part of it. Making sure you're talking to potential and current customers of your client is really important, because you're going to learn about what keeps them up at night, what are they worried about, and all those things can help still drive really amazing creative. I think the channels can be different in which you reach them. So strategically speaking, yes, it can be different. You're not going to be running necessarily a TV commercial for a B2B client, but you could still be producing really compelling video that is on a content channel, right? Whether, on LinkedIn or something that might pique their interest. So still there's creative opportunity in everything. And when I'm talking to potential hires, I say, if if you're looking to be ad famous, because think there's a lot of ego in this business as well. But if you're looking, really what we care about is did it work for our clients? We really take great pride in the fact that it needs to work, and I think that's why we've been in business for 25 years because uh, marketing is expensive, and we take that dollar really seriously, and our clients need to see results. And so um, I guess when I think about B2B business, the stakes are almost even higher. You need to help them grow their business like you would to B2C, but it's a different avenue in which you're reaching those customers. Again, they are human beings. So it might be a different way you reach them, but at the end of the day, the message has to be on point. It has to speak to their pain points.
I agree. I agree. Would you say that you'd look for people to hire if you have a new B2B client? Would you
Mm-hmm.
go and try to recruit people who worked with that kind of vertical or that kind of sector? Or
That's an interesting question. We haven't done that in the past. I think when we're looking at potential candidates, if they happen to have experience in a certain sector or vertical, that lines up with our client list. That's a pro, of course, or a plus. I but we've never specifically hired around a vertical before. We're very conservative with our hiring. In the 25 years we've been in business, I think we back at the first Great Recession in the United States, that would have been 2008. This is the only time we laid off one person, and
wow,
that is the only time we've ever had a layoff ever in 25 years of history. Is just one person in 2008, and so we're very, very conservative about hiring. We make sure we're looking pretty good because again, we think of our employees as our team, our family. They have families outside that
right.
of the office that they need to feed. So take that really seriously. So we don't typically do that. We tend to yeah, we tend to look for just really smart people that can learn about a business pretty quickly. So
Right, right. It's a methodology, so you can apply this to anything. You know, I think you don't need to hire someone from a certain vertical. It's a methodology. You just apply it. That's it.
Mhm.
Works anywhere. Should work anywhere.
Yes. And one thing that I think has kept us a little bit recession proof is we've been very intentional about making sure our pie chart I call it of industry sectors is pretty evened out. We don't put all of our eggs in one basket. I think maybe if you're a specialty agency where you only do healthcare, for example, yes, then I can see why you might hire someone that comes from that side of the business. But our business model is not industry specific. We do have some expertise in a few different areas of so of course that makes landing business a little bit easier if you do have some expertise already there, but we've been pretty intentional about making sure we're not too specialized.
But I'm glad you brought this up. People have been saying agencies that are generalists, they're gonna end up being obsolete or something. People should specialize. Agencies should pick a vertical and stick with it. What do you say to this? What do you think?
Well, I think for Stoltz, it's worked out for us not to be specialized. I can see either way. I guess the business that we're going after, they love our creative work. They love working with us. I think we're nimble and we're flexible, and I think there's other positive qualities beyond just being specialists in one only industry. Yes, we lost a pitch recently to a university, and they went with an education specific agency. So but we have also built our business not being specialized in one sector or industry. I think you have to definitely fill the needs of, the different specialties within our services. That's really important. So to make sure we are covering very well in the digital space as well as the traditional space, and make sure we have really smart people that understand, media and strategy. But again, we do not believe in having only one industry specific model, and it has worked out very well for us. I think this is quite evident during when I think about what happened in the tourism industry right when the pandemic hit. I think that was really hard on, say, agencies that only specialized in tourism. Thank goodness it's hopefully going to be short lived, but that's an example
Right.
where we believed in diversifying in different industries that are meeting also basic human needs, whether that be public transportation, energy, healthcare, education. Um, Plus, we like to think of finding clients that align with our values. I think when we're talking to a potential new business, they get a pretty good gut check on if we align value based, I guess. And people do business with people at the end of the day, just like we're trying to reach human beings. And so for us, we've done okay not specializing.
Right. Okay. What about a specific direction with the media and comms mix? Like would you say no to maybe a client asking for, or let's say a client is asking for digital stuff? Would you say, hey, we don't do this? I'm just giving you an extreme example.
Well, what we like to do is we don't do a lot of one-off project-based stuff. We look at our clients. Most of our clients, we help them for the entire year. So we're doing their planning, we're helping them strategy, and then we're executing against that. If there's something beyond our expertise, so say it is, it's some virtual reality experience. We've built partners that we partner with. Sometimes there's, video productions the same way. We have an awesome in-house video team, but there are sometimes, whether it's a scheduling conflict or just it's beyond the scope of what our team can do, we'll partner with really great other, production agencies. So I think it just depends on the situation. We will never pretend we can do something we can't, because that's not being very transparent, nor is it good for our client relationship. I think it doesn't feel super honest. Sure, you can fake it till you make it at times, but I really believe in we have to have a lot of knowledge around those spaces, and we have to have those good partnerships. So building those relationships outside your agency is important. But we will, if sometimes if a client comes to us and say they're just looking for a majority of the projects they're doing were going to be virtual reality, then we might say, we might not be a great fit because that's, tactical or project based, but we can give you a referral, or let's look at the big picture. Like let's look at the strategy behind using this as a media option or a production technique, and get to the bottom of is if it's the best thing for your business. So
Right. So this takes me to pitching then. Would you
mhm.
would you like, if the new business team comes by and says, like, we have this pitch and we need to work on it, and you just don't have time, your current business is pretty stacked up, you don't have time, what do you do?
Oh gosh, well, we have a pretty good bench when it comes to new business. One thing that I feel very comfortable saying is that our leadership team, so we oftentimes the new business pitches include myself, our CCO, our CEO and president, or our COO. One of the three of us is usually either all three of us, or at least one or two of us are within the new business pitch. But we have an awesome leadership team of associate creative directors, and we try to. I think I'm really proud of our entire team. Our account team's really smart. Sometimes an account person, we like to make sure the client is meeting people they are potentially going to be working with. We're small enough that most clients have access to the senior leadership or the senior teammates, and so we don't have any people behind the curtain. We bring our team with us to pitches. So if one of us is super underwater, we always know there's a bench that we can pull from. And I have the utmost respect and admiration for a lot of people on our team that isn't necessarily me. And I feel very proud that they could represent us in a pitch. So, but typically we try to make sure that one of the executive leadership team is on the pitch. And then we've actually put processes in place for new business. So again, if you talk about operations, we have a pretty good spreadsheet of when we're evaluating new business. There's different criteria that we hope they fall into. And then we have standardized a proposal and we've standardized a pitch template, and we customize it based on the situation. But again, have tried to put some of those processes in place so we're not reinventing the wheel every time a pitch comes up.
Mm-hmm. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, good. I'm gonna ask you to allocate a value of 100 between different attributes and skills for your typical creative director. So let's say you can divide a score of 100 between certain attributes. Let's say ideation, execution, delegation, and project management, and team resources optimization. What would get the most weight of 100 from these?
Oh gosh, I think probably the ideation execution part, if you're on the creative team, is really important. I think if you have awesome project managers, well, shoot, that's a tough one. I'd say ideation, I'd give like a 40, 42. And then the rest, I think, is pretty. I think execution. You can have all the ideas in the world, but if you can't execute it, then that's a problem. So that's probably 30. And then, gosh, project management and delegation are super, super important as well. So I'd probably say fifth. Let's see, what am I at? I don't even know, Matt. Delegation maybe 20%, and project management 10%, at least as a creative.
Okay. Well, you can. I don't. You gave execution 30, but you don't have to really execute yourself. You can.
Oh,
You can.
true.
You can delegate. You can come up with the creative concept
Good
and
point.
delegate. Yeah, So I don't know.
Well, and
what do you think?
I think that, see, you're making me do hard things like math. Math's hard. I think that again, ideas are super important. I think that keeps you relevant. I think that's why clients come to you, is for your creative thinking. Of course, but again, if you can't execute against that, and so you're right. I think delegation and making sure you have the right team resources is important. Also, we are in a relationship driven business. So that's why I think project management and making sure you're building those relationships with clients are equally important. So, I don't know. That's a really tough one for me to divide up. But I think as a creative, making sure you understand why executing and delegation is really important. That especially delegating. I think as a creative, sometimes it's hard to let go of that control. But you have to trust your team and make sure you have the right people in place and delegate appropriately, because there's just not enough time in the day. At the end of it, there's not enough time in the day for you to do everything yourself. And so you still want to be able to be a part of execution a little bit, just to keep relevant and make sure you're staying up with it. I like to still create. I love to still be a part of creative at a certain capacity, because I feel like it keeps that thinking fresh for me. But delegating is absolutely important. And then I just, again, project management, make sure people are hitting their deadlines and that communication with the clients pretty strong. I don't know, Ahmed, that makes me think they're all important. I'd give 100 to all of them.
Right, I know. But this takes me to delegation. When you, I've always wanted to ask this. When you're like tight on time, you have a TVC that you guys are working on, or you have an outdoor campaign, and you have adaptations and all that, and you need some artwork done.
Could you have
Mhm.
two team members working on the same script to save time?
Um, Oftentimes we do everything team based, and so we will from all the way from ideation through execution. We have a whole team working on it. So yes, so someone might be producing the main artwork for, say, the digital ads, and you have a production designer working alongside them to help execute some of the other sizes. Or when it comes to a video, we have usually an art director and writer working on scripts together. Then once it gets into production of it, we'll have, 1 to 3 people on set, depending on what kind of, if we have an outside production agency, or if we do in-house, we have 6 people. So almost everything is team based and collaborative. At least that's how we execute. And then we have a network of freelancers occasionally that we will hire if we need to get additional support. So it's not often that people are in their little silos and only doing one thing. They're oftentimes working with another person to get it done.
Okay. What would you, if you'd rank these according to importance? So, what would you sacrifice? Let me ask you in another way:
Okay.
meeting deadlines,
Mm-hmm.
being on brief, having that
Mm-hmm.
wow effect, or creating a viral deliverable content. What would you sacrifice?
Oh my gosh. You're asking a creative person this question. I think I would probably, I think creating viral deliverables, I actually think that's what I would sacrifice. I would want to make sure we met the deadline, that we were on brief and on strategy, and that we still had the wow effect with our audience. I think those three are probably equally important. When it comes to whether it goes viral or not, I can't say again that I don't think we've ever had a campaign in what, I mean, who determines that? Maybe it went viral amongst the sales teams within a wood products industry, but to me it's more about, did it work? Did we get people to understand the communications at hand? Did we get them to do the action we wanted them to do? And then ultimately, is our client happy? Did it help their business? And so um yeah, I think that's probably the one I would sacrifice.
Okay, so would you sacrifice quality to meet a deadline?
um we always say, one of the things we say in our agency is, would you be proud showing this to your mom?
Yeah.
Would you be proud showing this to your group of friends?
Right.
And would you be proud of this left the agency doors? And so we believe in not ever missing deadlines. I think, deadlines are incredibly important. Again, that is, you need to make sure you're keeping the client happy, but also could really affect a campaign. Um, don't think, but I think you have to have the right people in place that are willing to go above and beyond to make sure the quality is still there, even if it is a tight deadline. Um, and so I probably would say meeting the deadline is actually still the number one important thing. But when you have really good people in place and your client thinks it's really amazing work, that's okay too. It's okay if it's not going to be on your shelf for the next award you want to win. It could still be really high quality, but maybe not like what someone might say is award winning. It could still be really beautifully done. And again, does it work? You know, does it work? So I feel like it's almost sacrilegious to say as a creative person, but I mean, gosh, if you can't meet deadlines, you're not going to be in business for very long.
Right. Right. I agree. Okay, this takes us now to operations, the operations part. Um, the operations of a creative function. Do you follow certain steps?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm happy to tell you, I don't have any. I don't think any top secret information that I can't share, but we do have a process in place. So, once we get, say, the statement of work gets signed off, we typically have, we do have a creative lead process, we call it, where we have a kickoff with the client. We make sure that any person that is on the creative team that will be servicing this client in any aspect is present if they can before that meeting. Because I think you still, when you can hear it first-handed and learn from it and ask questions, that's really important. But even from that, we make sure that step one is if you couldn't attend the meeting, you're going to get all the notes, the recording, whatever. Then we go through then we go through a process where we're working with, as a creative lead, you're working with the account team on the strategy. You're very heavily involved on the strategic side of things too, because you might come up with a creative idea that falls really nicely in line with the strategy. And so that's a very collaborative process. And then we create the brief together. So usually the account team will be the first draft of the brief. They get together with the creative lead, work out the brief together until it's in a really good spot. Then we share it with the creative team. Once the brief has been signed off, and the client, and once the client has signed off on the brief, we've shared it with the creative team. We then do an internal kickoff where we answer any questions any of the creative team might have about the brief. I like to send the brief a couple days ahead of time. I think people need a little bit of a chance to process, to dig in, maybe look at some of the research. A brief is not a strategy, it's a brief, right? I say a brief has to have just enough information that if you hadn't worked with the client before, you know exactly what you're supposed to do. But it's not a strategy doc. It's not 100-page long. So it gives people a little time to dig in. We do an internal kickoff, and then we have a series of checkpoints. So whether it's outdoor campaign, we have 2 teams working on it. They go off into the sunset. They start coming up with their ideas, and we do 2 checkpoints, usually internally before the client ever even sees it. We do the first internal checkpoint. We look at the ideas. We kill our darlings. We get rid of the ones that aren't going to work, or we put them in our back pocket. We come up with more ideas. We refine. Then we have another internal where they're a little bit more fleshed out. The ideas are more fleshed out. Again, we narrow slightly, refine, and then we get ready to present to client. But then it doesn't stop there, of course. Once the client approves a certain direction, then we start to build out all the other pieces and parts. So say you have an outdoor campaign, you have 50 billboards that are going up somewhere. You might have 4 pieces of creative, different sizes, etc. We absolutely have everything proofed 3 times before it leaves the office. I think I can say that in my experience coming as a graphic designer, oftentimes I would make things look gorgeous, but not read the words. And it is incredible how many typos get missed in this business. And so I think making sure our process is it gets proofed 3 times before it's trafficked.
Client each time? Does someone sign?
We do. Yep.
On the artwork
We
itself?
absolutely do. Well, now it's all digital, right? And so what we do is we just make sure that we have 3 people proof. It's in we don't physically have them sign the paper. We used to do that back in the dinosaur days. You'd have someone sign their initials on the piece. Now it's just more a digital sign off. But yes, we definitely have a 3-person proofing process. And of course, the client has to approve as well before we even get into proofing. So anyways, I would say creativity is not linear. I think sometimes you come up with ideas very quickly. Sometimes they don't come that fast. And so that is more of I feel like a creative cycle more than a linear process. But to actually get from point A to the finish line of a creative project, it's absolutely process driven.
Right. But so let me ask you, who decides on the comms mix and the media mix, for example?
Oh gosh, that's again a pretty collaborative process. We have a media specialist in our office, and we have also a digital marketing specialist who does a little bit more of the heavy digital media side. We collaborate with the head of the account, as well as the creative lead on it. So the 3 of them, usually we get a plan together, we beat it up internally, we look at the budget, make sure it makes the most sense from a media dollar standpoint, as well as what their overall budget is. timing, etc. So it's usually a combination of 2 to 3 people that are working that out.
Do you ever decide on the deliverables?
Um, well, we recommend the deliverables. I say ultimately the client decides on what the finals are, because sometimes they have their ideas too. They
From the
might say,
agency
"Oh,
side.
well, yeah," but on the agency side, I I would say that we recommend, and then client signs off on deliverables. So, um, I think what we also have done is opened up a very safe communication channel. So if I don't agree with something or someone else doesn't, we talk about it, right? We
Right.
say, well, what do you think of this? Or I like to ask questions more than anything. Again, I think being a good listener makes you a stronger creative. And sometimes I'll say, okay, love this idea of pre-roll. Tell me a little bit about, you know, who it's targeting and where it's going and why that is more important than, you know, maybe it's pre-roll between pre-roll of YouTube and pre-roll on a connected TV.
Right.
Or I'll say, like, tell me the difference, but, tell me why this is the better route to go. And they say, oh, well, YouTube has a $7,000 a month minimum. So this made more sense because they're going to get more eyeballs. It's still very, very targeted, but they're going to get to run the campaign a little bit longer. So I like to ask questions about media. I'm definitely not a media specialist. I've learned a lot being in the business, but I like to ask just the why behind recommendations and then make decisions from there.
Would you ever accept a brief over a voice note or a text message?
Oh my gosh, no. I think that would be very, very difficult to work from. Briefs are not necessarily easy to come, they can be hard. It's like you have to narrow things down. But I absolutely would not accept a brief over a voicemail, probably.
Have you ever fired a client because of procedures?
Um, we haven't thankfully had too many situations where we've so-called fired a client. Oftentimes, again, if we have these check-ins with clients, sometimes we can see if our values aren't aligning. And oftentimes it comes up to be a mutual agreement. But if a client is not necessarily, because if they become so difficult to work with and our team starts to get really, beaten down, and suddenly it's probably not a very profitable client because of oftentimes a lot of different factors, we are okay saying goodbye because it's not good for our people and it's not good for the business. And so, but I would say oftentimes there's something mutual happening. And yeah, so we definitely have done that before. I hate to use the word fired, it sounds so harsh, but we have definitely had discussions around if it's a good fit or not.
What's your reaction with incomplete briefs? Do you send it back?
Oh yes. I'll say instead of sending it back, what I'll say is, hey, I don't think there's quite enough information on here to inspire ideas for a team. Can we go back and work on it together?
I need to write
Right.
this
So
down. That's a pretty diplomatic answer for me. Yeah.
well, I'll say, like, let's work on it together. Which pieces are you struggling on? Maybe we can put our heads together on it. But and again, we have a great account team. I don't think I've ever gotten an incomplete brief because we make it a collaborative process where they start it, but we say, you're not in this alone. Let's get together, and the creatively then works on, making sure we're all on board with what it's saying.
Right.
So also, if we expect our client to sign off on it, it can't be incomplete either. So
Right. Well, okay. What about strategic planning? Do you is there like do you guys have a function called strategic planning and it doesn't have to be called strategic planning per se,
Mhm.
but do you have someone who does strategic planning?
we we call our account team strategists.
Okay.
So the one little difference between our account team, how our agency is set up, is our creatives tend to work on multiple clients, right? They might touch 10 to 20 clients, Whereas our account team, they're building more of a book of business in terms of we like to have consistent relationships. They get to know the business a lot better. And so they might handle, depending on the size of client, 4 to 6 clients, let's just say. And so we lean on them to be our strategists. We are not large enough to have only like a director of strategy and all they do is strategy all day long. Our account team's incredibly smart and they get to know the client and the business very well. And then they become the strategists because of that. So we don't have the resources nor the size of our business to support a strategy person on every single account. So our account people become that. And then of course, as I mentioned, we train our creative team to understand and learn strategy. There's books I recommend even to our young creatives start reading about strategy because they will help shape that at some point in their careers if they continue to grow. And it's important for them to understand as well.
Yep. What's the name of a couple of books or a book that you could share?
Oh, gosh, I have some go-tos. If you're an up-and-coming creative leader, so I think we'll start there. I think Herding Tigers by Todd Henry is incredible. I really enjoyed that one. And I think it's, and that's as you're becoming more of a creative leader or a mentor to younger creatives, that's a wonderful book to read. I've always loved Hey Whipple, Squeeze This, which of course is Luke Sullivan. That's a classic. I think it's just funny and it's really a really enjoyable read. I try to read strategy books myself, being now that I'm a chief creative officer. Again, I challenge myself to learn other parts of the business. So I just read a great book called Super Strategist. That was really great. I also loved when I started writing a lot more, I read the copybook, which I think is awesome. I think, again, creatives are creative. So don't ever pigeonhole yourself into only being a graphic designer. If you have great ideas, you can learn other skills such as writing. And so that's a book I remember that I read that I really enjoyed, just learning about how to write better. Those are just the ones off the top of my head. I'm reading one right now by Sir John Haggerty. I probably said his name wrong, so hopefully he's not listening to this. But he's again retired.
Listening to this.
Okay. He's out of England, but he's written several books just from his perspective as a creative director. They're just really funny, and I've been enjoying that one. I'm reading his book about advertising right now. So, but I think if I can recommend, my top is probably Herding Tigers. That's been my favorite so far.
Nice. Thank you.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you about a typical kickoff meeting that you'd have with a new client. Do you go over your workflows, your templates, do you make it a day? Is it an event? Do you have barbecue over? I don't know. How is a kickoff meeting usually conducted in Idaho?
Well, I wish we could have a barbecue for every kickoff meeting, but we don't do that. We have them come up. We don't show them everything just so that they don't have to get caught up in the weeds, as I like to say. So if we have a kickoff, we have several questions we ask about the project. Again, maybe sometimes a great place to start is I love to ask questions from the creative brief, because that helps answer a lot of the, we might know some things, but reiterating that, and then when it comes back to them, they, it just makes more sense. So we typically have it be about an hour. And then if we're doing a strategy, we do full on half day to full day strategy sessions where we get together for the entire day and work out a plan together. So it just depends on the project or the if it's a planning session, those are a full day, and we have lunch brought in. We have our clients into the office. We try to, if we can do them in person, we like to do them in person. Although obviously oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, even in this virtual world that we've been living in, we were working from home for 18 months. We got really good with, we didn't do a full day on Zoom calls, but we got pretty good at doing, of course, virtual meetings. But if we can either fly to our client or have them come to us if they're not, local, we try to do the strategy sessions to be all day in person.
Yeah, if we have a client, like if I'd say I'd meet a client that isn't familiar with what goes on in an agency, I think it's very important to walk them through the workflow and the process time of deliverables, and just to give them an idea, because otherwise, if it's a long-term contract, like if it's a 12 months contract, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a big problem managing expectations.
Yeah, so we'll usually walk through, we have like an entire strategy presentation that we'll give, and then they have a copy of it. And then we do weekly status calls with a lot of our clients because we are oftentimes executing an entire year's worth of work throughout the year. And so, there's work back schedules. There's of course a strategy doc. Then there's the work back schedule. Then there's all these different milestone check-ins. That is definitely an important piece of it to make sure everything's running on time, on budget. There's that constant client communication. But it's usually a pretty developed out deck that we're following.
Oh, right. I wanted to ask you. You joined Stoltz from its very beginning, right? And before that, I know the founder was working. He actually was part of another agency that he grew to be the biggest in the state of Idaho, right? And then he quit that, and then he went and did his own thing. And it's been 25 years now, and you and I were talking before, and it's the same size, basically. Not the same size, but what I'm trying to say is it didn't expand to other states and to Canada, for example, and to grow regionally and grow. And I think why? That's my question: is why?
Well, I had the great blessing to work with Ken Stoltz for I want to say 17 years before he passed away from brain cancer, and learned so much from him. I think he had a pretty simple philosophy. Let's create great creative work. Let's have fun while we're doing it, and let's make money. And so he really believed in hiring people that, I like to say, hire someone who's better than you are. Not only will you grow from them, but also that's truly how the magic happens. And so I just learned a great deal from him in terms of keeping an agency. The reason it's my understanding that he decided to break off from a large agency is because he was a family driven man. And I think that having an agency that was a little bit smaller and nimble and wasn't caught up in the bureaucracy and the slowness of what sometimes larger operations, some of the baggage it comes with. He just wanted a great group of people to work with every day, and it didn't have to be super large. We are proud to have grown by 8 people in the last, I think 18, 19 months. We're about to hire a 23rd person, which is actually the largest the agency has ever been. We tended to have about 11 to 13 people on average. I think the largest I ever, before we started growing the business a little bit more, was 15. I guess my point is that we're still considerably small compared to a lot of agencies, and
he did that on
we
purpose.
just want to, Well, we call it intentional growth. So we want to make sure that we're not just growing for growth's sake. We want to make sure we're being intentional so that when we say our clients have access to senior level leadership and talent, that they truly get that. They're not going to get the C team. They're still going to get the A team. But as we grow, we don't necessarily want to just grow for growth's sake. So we're trying to be very intentional because, as I mentioned, that work-life harmony, being a woman-owned business, it's a bit of a minority over here in the United States to have both a CEO and a creative director and a COO. We have an entire female leadership team, but what we'd like to see is just to make sure that work-life harmony is always happening, and also that we're intentional about how we grow. Because you can still have a very profitable, thriving business, but not be hundreds of people or in other states. And of course, we have clients outside of Idaho. We have worked out how to work with them by being in this beautiful state. We're very lucky to live somewhere that has it's awesome to raise a family here. The lifestyle here is wonderful. So we're proud to be in Idaho. And, but we do have, in the future, we have a couple remote employees right now. The world has every year it shrinks.
Right.
and yeah, and so we've been able to still conduct business having one, I would say, corporate headquarters, if you will, but we do have remote employees, and we have some real wonderful policies around remote work and just that flexibility piece. So yeah, it's worked out. We haven't there hasn't been a need nor desire to necessarily go set up an office in New York City or LA.
I like that.
Yeah.
I really like that. It's a lot of entrepreneurs that once they get into business and they think, I want to grow, without setting an objective nor a purpose, but no, But he had previous experience. Of course, he knew what he wanted to do, so
Sure.
it's different, right? So to say that no, we're just gonna stay this size and grow carefully. I think it's very wise. So,
Well, and as I mentioned, we don't want to. We look at our team as people that we truly care about. So we don't want to be expanding and fluctuating all the time. We'd rather be steady in our growth and intentional. And even if we go to 50 people, we're still going to be small considerably compared to a lot of other agencies out there. And we're okay with that.
Right. Well, good. As long as you know what you're doing, that's it, Yeah.
Well, knock on wood, so far so good. I don't know what I'm doing all the time, but
right. No, as long as you know how much you're growing, how much you it's manageable. If you see, this is another thing that working with Jig helps with, is that when you grow and you need to hire more resources, you can get to know how many resources you need. If you need to get rid of resources, God forbid, you get to know how many resources you need to. But hopefully you never get to that. See, that's the thing. But people, when they grow, they hire. Let's hire, and they don't necessarily know how many should they hire. And it's this optimization of resources. This is what a software like
it's been a really interesting. This year is my 20th year at the agency, and again, I've worked with amazing people. Another thing that I would say that Ken Stoltz had a gift at was just hiring really smart, wonderful people. And I've kept in touch with so many colleagues over the years. Many of them have gone on to do other great things, and I still have lunch with them. He was really about building a business with people that were just good human beings. And that's something that his daughter, who has since taken over the agency, really believes in is to make sure we have that sort of culture that empowers our people to have the space to think about big ideas, but also have that work-life harmony and know that we care about them beyond just what happens. They're not just a cog in the wheel. And that's important to us.
Right. Well, here's the 20 more years. And
Thank you. Yes.
I think you have an amazing career. And to be able to, manage what you've done and manage a family at the same time. And, I think you should be proud of yourself. I think you are, but I'd like to share this with you. So here's another 20 years. Good for you. Absolutely.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. It's been, like I said, I learn something new every day, and that's what I love about this business. So, and I love that I can have a family, and to me, that's the most important job at this point in my life, and they're number one. And I'm lucky to have a career that supports that choice, but also that keeps me really fulfilled. And
Awesome.
Thank
Well,
you.
knock on wood. Mashallah, as
Yes.
we would say here. All right. So
Mashallah.
yeah, that's
Mashallah. Mashallah.
right. Exactly. That's the keep the evil eye away. You know, it's like knock on wood or whatever.
Well, and I wish you the best of luck. And I think your business is going to be very well received. And I think your expertise and knowledge, having spent so much time in the industry too, will be very helpful to many people.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I hope so. Well, I guess we can wrap this up. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I just want to thank you again for, like I said, it's an honor and privilege to be asked to give a little bit of what I've learned over the years. Again, I don't know everything, but I've learned a little bit. Just so thank you for allowing me to tell my story. And yeah, I just really appreciate it.